two. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. This was a technical difficulty morning day, but it's still a phenomenal day. I take full responsibility for Sorrell's actions. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to start today's conversation. My name is Giovanni Gonzalez, and I get to introduce America's executive coach, Mr. Sorrel Catan. Good morning, Sorrel.
Good morning, Giovanni. In a world where 100% responsibility is the bar, I too take responsibility for your actions, and I'm delighted to be co-hosting the Daily Huddle with you, my business partner, and the #1 transformational leadership coach. Today, we continue the series of conversations on the Daily Huddle designed to address in our society in America injustice and inequality. And it is my honor today to introduce my very good friend, Charlot Lucien, who is treating this question today. What are some of the factors, historical and current, that explain how immigrants, specifically Haitian-American immigrants, that's the perspective he'll bring, how immigrants relate to the current struggle to challenge racist behavior in the US and its impact on Black productivity. Charlot Lucien is a special breed. He's one of my favorite breeds. He's an artist, not just any artist, but an artist who takes words in both Creole, Haitian Creole, English, and French, and makes them not only sing, but makes them paint pictures for us. And I cannot wait to see the pictures you paint with your words today on this very important issue. And I want to tell you a few things about Charlot. Charlot is a poet, a visual artist, and media personality who resides in the state of Massachusetts since the early 90s. He's also the founder and director of the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts, which started in 1995 to promote Haitian culture. He's been active in the artistic and cultural arena going back to the late 80s in Haiti and since the 90s in New England, both in the Haitian and the American communities. Charlot uses visual arts, poetry, and storytelling in 3 languages as artistic expressions, instruments of awareness among his compatriots and across various cultures. As the director of the Haitian Artists Assembly, he brings together artists to produce artworks that challenge negative narratives and stereotypes about Haiti. And today he's here to bring us a short compilation of his thinking, his work, challenge our thinking, and forward the conversation for the creation of a world where we end inequality and injustice. Good morning, Charlot. It is so amazing to have you on. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you so much again, Soler. Thank you again, Giovanni, for welcoming me, Daily Hurdle. And this topic is quite an extraordinary topic to address, so we'll do our best in the next 15 minutes. If I may also ask or add to just what you mentioned, I also view myself as a humble public health servant since my full-time job, in fact, is into public health. And I'm bringing this into perspective because my past work managing HIV/AIDS programs, where I saw the impact of discrimination, where I saw the impact of stereotyping. My also past experience managing some mental health programs for refugees resettling here in the US, coming from Africa, from Asia, also bring into perspective the idea of how immigrants are impacted by structural or systemic racism. Now, for this very topic, I thought that we had to rely both on history and also to rely on the present reality to understand how immigrants, and I'm in this case going to talk about maybe Haitian-American immigrants, to understand how they can strongly relate to what's happening in the US and in the world now. Let's remember that this movement that we are seeing in the US is now being embraced all over the place, in Africa, in Asia, in South America. People are standing up to racism. It has to be, I'm not going to say fully dismantled. You have to mitigate its impact. I don't know that you'll ever be able to eliminate racism, because for some people it's a matter of heart. And in some instances, as they just did in Boston, it's a public health issue. That's the mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, who just formally put the word out that they are now considering racism as a public health emergency to be treated the same way that you treat the type of natural disasters. Now, I mentioned that we have to go back to history and then consider the present to understand how we relate. Let me put it bluntly that in my view, Haiti has been a nation of protest. In fact, the very existence of Haiti is a protest in itself. To be the first Black, to have completed the first successful Black revolt, to be the first Black republic in the world and the second republic in the Americas after the US. And this happened, let's remember, after the slaves defeated the Spanish troops, the British troops, and then the French troops between 1791 and 1803. We know the consequences. Following this, France had to literally sell the Louisiana territories and surrounding territories to Jefferson in 1803. And that was going to literally double the size of the US, extending the US territories all the way into the West Coast. So that was one first impact of this. The second thing that we have to remember is that the US literally refused to recognize Haiti as a country. So for that to happen, they had to benefit from the complicity of France, because France had refused to recognize Haiti as an independent country and imposed an indemnity, let's call it a ransom, which amounts today to about $33 billion. Why did Haiti have to entertain trade, diplomatic, and economic relations with Haiti unless Haiti paid? And for you as a nation to survive, you needed to have those kind of relations with other countries. So this is to say that was one impact of this, let's call it embargo on Haiti. So US was going to also apply a policy of containment from Jefferson up to Abraham Lincoln. Between 1803 up to 1862, the US refused to recognize Haiti. So why? Because all those American presidents were in fear that the Haitian slave revolt was going to inspire Blacks, particularly in the South. And believe me, that did happen. Think about Nate Turner. Think about even some white abolitionists such as John Brown. All of them were going to actually join this movement, and they were all inspired by Haiti. So I'm saying this to say that over time, between 1803 and 1862, when you have friends advocating to other countries not to recognize Haiti and imposing a ransom, when you have the US systematically refusing to acknowledge Haiti as an independent country, when you have also in 1821, the first gathering of those new states in the Americas, they formally declined to invite Haiti, again, for fear that the Haiti's example was going to spread around. Now you have a sense why Haitians might understand what happened to George Floyd on this fatal day when people pinned him down on the concrete and killed him. Haiti for 215 years have been feeling the need of certain powers, international powers, on its economy. Haiti has been unable to breathe between 1804, the date of its official independence, up to now, because again, we felt the need of economic embargo, discrimination, and racism on Haiti as a nation. So there you have a sense how we can relate. So Haitians, like many Caribbeans, like many Africans, like people from the Dominican Republic, people from Asia, people from South America, they are all immigrants, the same way that the first pilgrims landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where I am now, the same way that blacks were brought from Africa to work in the field, the same way that Chinese people were also brought as immigrants to work on the projects to create those railroads from the east going to the west. So we are all immigrants, but guess what? Not all immigrants are equal, are they? You know, for example, what happened to Haitian immigrant Abnel Wima. This goes back maybe to 1991, when in a police precinct in New York, he was brutalized, beaten, and sodomized with a broom by 3 policemen on the very site of a police precinct. He was an immigrant. The same way, we also know what happened to Rodney King in March 1991, when he was subjected to so much beating that he almost died. And this was with the Los Angeles Police Department. I'm going to say also, let's go back to maybe January of 2008, when the very president of this great country held a meeting. I won't repeat the word that he used back then, but he was labeling Africans, Haitians, people from South America, people from Latin America as a certain things that came out of his mouth, and that was demeaning, that was offensive. So this is to say again, whether we are talking about African Americans, whether we are talking about people from Central America or Latin America, or from Africa or from Haiti, we are all talking about certain people who share a certain characteristics. They are not of the same color, quote unquote. They're not other people. They are black, they are brown, they are yellow, they are red. So there is then this community of being subjected to racism that will bring us together and help us stand together. I want to say that we should consider racism actually as the manifestation of, or the symptom of something that's bigger. The concept of internalized white supremacy that goes back maybe to the 1600s. It's this refusal to recognize the existence of Black people, or in the case of Haiti, as a Black republic, right here in the country that had claimed to be the beacon of freedom and liberty. So let me say that in the era of protest against racism, police brutality, you could assume that maybe immigrants had to face certain choices. If we are immigrants, think about it. Some of us might be here on a visa status. Some of us might be here as resident aliens. Some of us, of course, ultimately got the US citizenship. However, some of us are also here under some very special policies. I'm thinking about what you call DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. This is to allow people who came here in the US as children who are undocumented to have maybe every 2 years a certain renewal of their status that allowed them to go to school, to get some federal benefits, or to even have a work permit. I'm also thinking about people who are benefiting from TPS. TPS, temporary protective status, was instituted by President Bill Clinton in the early 1990s, maybe in 1993, to allow people from Central America who are victims of certain natural disaster or who are fleeing political persecution to come here in the US and to reside and to work and to go to school and to have the status renewed frequently. Haitians also benefited from the status after the Haiti earthquake of 2010. Now, when I mention DACA and TPS, these are two particular federal status that allow people to be here legally in the country. Now, if you are an immigrant and then you feel that you are historically so connected to those protests and that you need to be in the streets to join your African-American brothers, to join the Black Lives Matter movement, you have to think about it. This status can be revoked. There could be this more general constitutional amendment to say we no longer want those type of dispositions, policies that were, again, instituted under either President Bill Clinton or under President Obama. They can be actually be totally eliminated. If you get arrested in one of those demonstrations and you get an arrest record, it doesn't matter that you are not attending a violent type of protest. The very fact that you have an arrest record in your record will make it easy or easier for an immigration officer to tell you, no, you are not going to get this visa, you are not going to get this particular status renewed. So there are indeed some real risks associated in being a protester as an immigrant. However, guess what I've been seeing? I'm in Boston. I've been in some of those protests in Franklin Park in Boston, in the South End in Boston, which used to be called or viewed as one of the strongholds of racism. I've been in those protests on the Park Plaza, City Hall Plaza, where you have the JFK building and where you have the municipal building. I've been in some of them in the Boston Common. Every single time, Sorel, Giovanni, I have to actually see this young kid who has a Haitian flag wrapped around his neck, wrapped around his face as a mask, or some of them are bluntly just carrying their flag. You may have seen also in the internet a few of those demonstrations in Miami, in New York, where you either have a Haitian flag standing up or a sign that says 1804. 1804 is the year Haiti was formally proclaimed as an independent country. So there have been people, whether they are Haitians or they are Haitians, who are calling on history to remind people that there are certain things that are possible. Haiti did it in 1804. Martin Luther King was an official of maybe Malcolm X. They got all those protests and those demonstrations that led to the acceptance of the civil rights movements in 1963, 19 Johnson. So I'm saying that there are some kind of bigger causes, and we need to be part of them as Haitians, as immigrants, bonding, joining African Americans to get to the dismantlement or to get to the eradication of racism. And I'm going to say again, at the structural level or systemic level, I don't know that you'll be able to remove racism into the heart and soul of some people. So let's be clear. Although I evoked the traditional racism, although I talked about the historical factors, immigration policies, we also need to look at present practical reasons that justify us being actively in the streets. Let's put it this way. As professionals, as entrepreneurs, as private or public health employees, I'm thinking, for example, of Mr. Christian Cooper, earlier, an accomplished African-American professional, he was bird watching, and because he mentioned to a white woman, you need to keep your dog in leash, this woman said, I am going to call the police and say, there's an African-American man who is threatening my life. This person knows how to use white privilege, how to send a threat, because he knows that the system will automatically stand by her and crush this black man. So as professionals, you and I and our friends and colleagues who are watching now, we actually have to stand up and then participate in those demonstrations to try to change the system. We need to assume more visibility, not let our young children who are in the streets do the demonstrations. As professionals, we also need to keep in mind that my friend who's architect in Atlanta or who's in Texas, who left Boston because he couldn't actually pursue a career because he is a black architect with higher degree than some of his colleagues. Why? Because he was the subject of either microaggressions. He was the subject of subtle racism. He was the subject of unconscious bias that prevented him from going above the ceiling that they had established for him. He was getting those nice remarks that he was a great guy, that he was a great black or Haitian architect. It's as if being a Haitian architect or an African-American architect was something that was totally exceptional. This is where the whole concept of exceptionalism is totally skewed. They are making you an exception to prevent others from getting to the positions they are entitled to. I'm also saying that as parents, we need to be out there in the streets, because if we don't contribute to dismantle this racism, whether overt or real, our kids for whom we paid $300,000 for them to complete a doctorate, a master, will never get into those right positions. So ultimately, we cannot afford to sit this one out. It's about our dignity as humans, as persons. It's about our very survival. It's about the survival of our children, and we are getting results. Look what's happening in Minnesota, Minneapolis, in New York, in Boston. We are having conversations about changing the budget lines of the police departments in order to reallocate these monies and these budgets into more purposeful and more meaningful social work that will diffuse those situations. We are thinking about changing the culture into the judicial system and into the workplace so that we can formally get into places we are supposed to. So then again, I'm going to conclude to say thanks for opening up this conversation. I bet that we can say more, but at this point, I'm going to say thank you again, and I hope that the viewers and listeners will take this and have the conversation with their children and be also in the streets to protest.
Charlot, thank you for the call to action, and thank you for a stroll down both past and recent history that points to the structural, both social and economic structures that are in place that keeps inequality as well as injustice a thing that we have to deal with. And when I say we, I mean all people, whether you're perpetrating injustice and inequality, whether you're the victim of it, you are dealing with it. So thank you for bringing that, and thank you for the call to action. And now I want to open it up to you, the viewers, both on Facebook and in the virtual studio audience. Questions, keep them tight, keep them short. We want to give as many people an opportunity to speak. We started late, it's 9:30, we're going for another 10 minutes. So who's got questions? Sheila, go ahead.
All right, great. That was great. And I'll make my question quick. When you said that racism was a public health emergency, that's the first time I ever heard that. And could you, Charlotte, just say a little bit more about that?
So I live in Boston. I am part of the public health system. It's totally unprecedented. The mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, just made a public announcement declaring racism as a public health emergency.
Wow.
What that means concretely is that when you talk about emergency preparedness, Either you are with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, either you are with the Boston Public Health Commission, they are going to have to find meaningful budget lines. I'm not talking about token allocations, meaningful budget lines to boost the current budget of those particular divisions in those public health institutions in order to address them the same way that they have addressed H1N1, the same way that they are addressing now COVID-19. So there will be allocation of funding for staff, for prevention and education, for mental health counseling, for training of maybe social workers, for training of the police force in order to either mitigate the impact of racism.
Wow.
Now, the proclamation or the statement was made. They have yet to formally tease out and sort out all the details or the structures that will need to be in place. We know, for example, right now that they already decided to pull out 10% of the budget of the Boston Police Department that is dedicated for overtime, and they are going to reallocate this funding. This is a matter of several $1 million to either train the police or to devote this funding to programs that are going to either train young kids, take them off the street, or support summer programs, support mental health programs. So this is real, this is concrete.
Wow.
And as a resident of Boston or as an immigrant from Boston, I have to give it to the mayor of Boston. He's really walking the talk.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is from Ronald Bertrand. Good morning, Ronald.
Hey, good morning, Sorel. Good morning. And the question is really close, very close to what Sheila just asked. And Sheila, we were thinking about the same thing. And Charlotte, you answered my question, very well. Is just, that was the first time I heard racism being a systematic, being a public health issue. So I'm glad with the answer, but I'm going to open a little window there from an architectural standpoint, where is this really looking at the word about location that all real estate tend to connect with, and which is also an economic aspect, is can we start seeing, and I'm just putting it to everyone in the panel right now, can we start seeing out of this disparity, the social disparity and the racial disparity, that we start seeing that language disappear? Because if we call to become totally connected on the level of race is not an issue, so could we get to the point where everybody could leave, a multi-million-dollar house will be next to somebody that's, making $35,000 a year. So I'm just, kind of opening up a window there. But great presentation. I just wanted to make the comment, and I'm yet waiting to see the systematic approach to really tear down this wall of racism from the from somewhat of a systematic way and a methodical way to do it. So I'll stay there. It was more of a comment. Okay.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you so much. And just so you know, each and every one of you, Charlot Lucien will also appear this weekend on Voices of Transformation, an hour long treating the subject and treating the very questions that you're posing. We have another question from Andrea Villa. Andrea.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Charlotte. Thank you so much for this information provided. And my question is really related to the original question of your speech today, of your discussion today, which is how we immigrants, I'm originally from Colombia, relate to the struggle right now that is seen and is exposed via this racism, anti-racism, and that battle. what is your opinion from an immigrant perspective about the words equality and equity? Is it something that's why we relate to the struggle, or is it something just in the sense of discrimination? If you, because those two words for me are really deep. Is not, you start with equality and then you get to a point of equity. And I just wanted to pick your brain about those as an immigrant. What are your thoughts regarding those words?
This is a complex question for me. And as an immigrant, let me say, as a Haitian immigrant,
Mm-hmm.
we come here and we hear about the term white and blacks, and we start to process that. Put it this way, Haiti has been independent since 1804. So we grew up in the country as blacks. Yes, of course, we know about colorism. We know about people who are blacks, who are mulattoes of different skin color. But in general, we just know that we are people. And we come here and suddenly start to realize that they look at you as black, and the subtle text here is that you are inferior. And even when you are now, you have the same level of economic status and power, they still look at you in a certain way. So it was hard for me as an immigrant to process the notion that I was something different than just being a person, being labeled as a person of color, as if now there's a reference that is called white, and then me, I've always mentally tried to deny the fact that I have to fit in as a person who is equal here. It was supposed to be to me a non-issue. However, when I started to realize what African Americans had to go through, it's not just something from the 19th century, early 20th century. And right now, as we speak, I said I cannot be naive and deny that there is a real issue here, whether in terms of equality, whether in terms of equity, that needs to be systematically attacked. I am going to refer to what my friend Ronald Bertrand said earlier. You can try to dismantle the walls of racism into institutions, into structures. You may not be able to dismantle such a wall in people's heart and soul. So we have to work, I think, at two fronts, at two levels, within the context of either policies, whether it's about housing, whether it's about immigration, whether it's about, I can name public health, where if we can be advocate and activist to make this thing happen within structures and organizations, that's one. The second area where we see something can happen, at the end of this year, leading to political change, people needs to be involved. I'm not going to tell people who to vote for or who not to vote for. However, there are elections happening at the local and national level that people can contribute to that will make for, I'm going to say, incremental change. One term, one president, or even two terms won't change racism in America. However, it may improve the situations so that we as individuals and our sons and daughters don't have to go through what I, as a person from Haiti, or you as a person from another country, have been going through. So I think, again, we need to get involved to dismantle the structures.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Charlot, for creating a reiteration of the call to action. Indeed, we need to get involved. And this platform on the Daily Huddle is the place where each of you not only get to express your views, but you get to equip yourself with what you need to have your self-expression in the world be the kind of contribution you want it to be. Giovanni, any comments from you? And I'd love you to close it up and give Mr. Charlot his last words as well.
Phenomenal. Charlot, thank you so much for being here and for the courage to speak. I just want to say a few things on a personal level. I just love hearing you speak, man. It's just like, I love it. Love the accent. You know, something was showing up for me as you were sharing. I remember many, many years ago, you know, I give credit to my grandmother and to my mother, to the life I have. But many years ago, my dad, I called my dad to tell him that I was here in Georgia and I was in the North, and there was this thing I never experienced called racism, and I feel like it was going to hinder my future. And I went on to this kind of sharing with him a little bit of a context that I felt he really didn't understand. And he said, you know, you gotta know something, and I just kind of want to share it in the public arena as well. Giovanni, there is conscious bias, and then there is unconscious bias, and then there is racism. And if you can't tell the difference, you're always going to get stuck there, judging people on racism, right? So, and you also got to discover for yourself the opinion you have about that, because the ceiling that your future has is not going to be ever going to be on somebody else's opinion, because you have so many examples of people who went through your journey who did not get stuck. So, so kind of push through, right? Like buckle up and push through the conscious and unconscious bias and racism, right? And I really got something for that. And I also, you know, I want to say it that way as well to my fellow immigrants who are out there protesting. They also have to have a strength and character to know the difference. And so I wanted to add that to the conversation, and I immensely appreciate the call to action, because I'm all about the action that you are proposing. Having said that, I want to do a really small public announcement. We're going to have our town hall. The Daily Huddle is going to have a town hall on the topic of Black, Brown, and White, speaking on the power of diversity, ending inequality and injustice next week, Saturday. So please register. I left the link on the chat. And Charlot, what are your last words to end today's conversation?
My last words, there are some small steps that we can take. Right now behind me, you are looking at it's an allegoric meeting between Toussaint Louverture and Frederick Douglass. We need to start at home telling our children about Simon Bolivar, about Toussaint Louverture, about Nelson Mandela, about Frederick Douglass. So we need to have those conversations to know their history. We need to go into the school systems in those and then tell the schools that they need to actually incorporate these particular leaders and heroes into their curricula, so that immigrants as well as African Americans and children from Latin America also know about the great leaders who transformed. I'm taking education because this is what will ultimately change the mentality of future generation. I also want to say that it's worth, as I said before, being in the streets, so people don't leave it to maybe labeling that those protests are violence because of the misbehavior of a few individuals. People like you and I, we need to be out there and make it be known that we are embracing the cause. And finally, in the workplace, we need to be able to address that. Go ahead.
No,
so my final point was that in the workplace, we also need to change or to challenge the instances of microaggression and unconscious bias as well. We need to take a step in the workplace as well. Thanks again for opening this door.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you so much for today's conversation. Sorel, your last word.
My last words, always the same. Thank you. I love you. And I know your stand. Let your stand be fully expressed through your actions and your words. Go forth and have an awesome day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.